My mom didn't hesitate when she said it. You need to leave. Your brother is moving in and we're not supporting a parasite anymore. Parasite. I just stood there for a second waiting for it to sound less serious. It didn't. My dad didn't correct her. He just nodded like it made sense. So I didn't argue, didn't defend myself. I packed one suitcase and walked out. No drama, no explanation. By 5 a.m. the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. My dad. Over and over again. When I finally answered, his voice sounded different. Not angry, panicked. In my family, roles were assigned early. Not officially. Not in a way anyone ever said out loud, but you could feel it. My brother was the one everyone rallied around. His problems became shared problems. His plans became family priorities. If something needed attention, it somehow always led back to him. And me? I was the opposite, the one who had things handled, the one who didn't need help. At least that's how they saw it. Because I didn't ask for much. I worked, I paid my bills, I stayed out of the way. And over time, that turned into something else, an assumption that I didn't contribute, that I was just there, living in the background of everything else that mattered more. What they didn't see were the details, the payments that went through quietly, the things I covered without mentioning, the way I made sure certain responsibilities never became problems for anyone else. It wasn't about recognition. I didn't expect that. But I also didn't expect to be invisible, especially not in a space I was actively holding together. Still, I didn't correct them, because I thought eventually they'd notice that the reason things felt stable wasn't luck. It was me. The conversation didn't build up slowly. It happened all at once. My mom walked into the room like she had already decided how it was going to end. Your brother is moving in, she said. No context, no discussion, just a statement. I looked up confused for a second. Okay, I said. And? And you need to leave, she added. That was it. No transition. No explanation that made it easier to process. I stared at her, waiting for something else. Something that would make it sound less final. It didn't come. My dad stepped in then, but not the way I expected. He has 2 kids, he said, like that explained everything. They need the space. I nodded slowly, trying to understand how that turned into me leaving entirely. I can move things around, I said. We can figure something out. My mom shook her head. No, she said. This isn't temporary. Then she added it, the word that stayed. We're not supporting a parasite anymore. It didn't sound emotional. That's what made it worse. It sounded decided. Final. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I realized something in that moment. They had already made up their minds, and nothing I said was going to change it. I didn't argue after that. There wasn't a point. Once people decide what role you play in their life, they don't usually pause to question it. They just expect you to accept it. So I went back to my room and packed. 1 suitcase. Not everything. Just what I needed. Because this wasn't about leaving forever. At least that's what they thought. I paused for a moment before closing the drawer beside my desk. Inside it was a folder. Thin. Nothing dramatic about it. Just paperwork. Documents I had signed months ago. Quiet decisions I made when I realized things weren't as balanced as they looked. Back then, it felt like preparation. Now, it felt like clarity. I didn't take the folder with me. I didn't need to. Because the information in it wasn't something that disappeared when I walked out. It was already in motion. I zipped the suitcase, picked it up, and walked back into the living room. Neither of them said anything. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just a quiet expectation that I'd leave. So I did. No argument, no explanation, just movement. The door closed behind me with less sound than I expected, and for a second I stood there holding the handle, thinking about everything I hadn't said. Then I let go, because the truth wasn't something I needed to explain right now. It was something they were going to understand very soon. The first call came at 5:12 a.m. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't see it, but because I already knew what it meant. By the third call, I picked up. My dad didn't sound like he had the night before. "Where are you?" he asked. Not angry, uneasy. "I left," I said simply. A pause. Then, "We need to talk." I didn't respond right away, because something in his voice had changed. Not urgency, confusion. "What's going on?" he added. That question told me everything. They had found it. Or at least something that didn't make sense anymore. The paperwork is in the drawer, I said. Another pause, longer this time. What paperwork? I leaned back, letting the silence sit for a second. Then I said it. The ownership documents. The line went quiet. Not disconnected, just still. I don't understand, he said finally. I know, I replied. Because they hadn't needed to understand before. As long as everything worked, as long as the house stayed stable, there was no reason to question how it was being held together. But now, for the first time, they were looking at it differently. Not as something they controlled, but as something they had assumed. And assumptions don't hold up very well when they're written down. We met later that day, not at the house. Somewhere neutral. A small office with a table between us that felt more like a boundary than a place to talk. My dad was already there when I walked in. The folder was in front of him. Open. He didn't look angry anymore, just unsettled. You need to explain this, he said. I sat down across from him. I don't, I replied calmly. It's already explained. He glanced back at the documents, signatures, dates, ownership structure laid out clearly, not complicated, just something they had never bothered to look at before. We thought, he started. I know, I said. Because I did. They thought the house was theirs. They thought I was just living there. They thought everything that worked without effort. I've been covering the mortgage for 2 years, I continued. It's under my name. He didn't interrupt this time, didn't try to correct me, because the documents didn't leave room for interpretation. You can't just, he started again, then stopped. Because he realised something. This wasn't about what they wanted anymore. It wasn't about decisions they could make without me. It was about something they had already decided, without understanding what they were deciding. And now they were finally seeing it. I didn't go back to the house, not after that. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. The conversation ended without a clear resolution. No apologies, no dramatic shift, just understanding. The kind that comes too late to change what already happened. They stayed, at least for a while. But things weren't the same, because once something is seen clearly, it can't go back to being assumed. As for me, I moved on. Found a place that felt like mine. Not just legally, but in every sense that mattered. And when I think back to that night, the word my mom used, parasite, it doesn't bother me anymore. Because I know the truth. I wasn't taking anything from them. I was the one holding it together. And the moment I left, they finally had to see it.